Okay, so hello and welcome inside the course. Now you probably have a million questions. Where do I start? How do I do this? How long is this going to take? How do I join the Facebook group? Liam, I just want to touch base with you on one thing before we begin. And that's absolutely fantastic, and all that stuff is going to happen. But right now I want to talk about what is tinnitus. What is tinnitus? What is hyperacusis? What is pulsatile tinnitus? What is vertigo? What is Meniere's disease? And let's tie it all in with hearing loss as well. Put a nice bow on it just so you understand exactly what we're doing. Now, there's so many theories as to what tinnitus is, and I got to admit, as I've kind of, gone through this and evolved and silenced my own tinnitus and other people's tinnitus, I too have changed my idea of what tinnitus is. Where does the actual sound emanate from? Why do some people have different noises? Why does the jaw affect it? Why does stress affect it? Why does diet affect it? Why can the weather affect it? Does age play a role? Does gender play a role? What about women who give birth and they get tinnitus after that? What about chemotherapy? What about drugs? How can one symptom be caused by so many different things? As I said, I got to admit, I used to think it was all a hair cell problem. And you got to understand why. When I was going to my ENT said, Liam, you've got tinnitus and it's from drums, and it was from drums and stress and bad diet and a whole bunch of other things, The ENT said, look, here's a diagram of the cochlea. Here is the shell sort of shape, the cochlea. You've got lymph in there. He didn't explain it this well. Obviously, I wish he did. You've got the stereocilia, which is the hair that moves in the lymph inside the cochlea. And the stereocilia are the hair cells, and yours are broken. That's what I wanted to do to the ENT when he told me that. But he was wrong, okay? And why do I think that? Well, it's a couple of reasons. The first reason was, as I started to fix my tinnitus and I reversed it 100%, that was about 2 years ago now, I thought, well, the ENT said the reason for my tinnitus was the broken hair cells, and now my tinnitus is gone, so therefore I've regrown my hair cells. Now I've come to really, believe and see that you actually can't regrow your hair cells. And that shouldn't scare you, because most of the time, and I really mean most of the time, if you have tinnitus, it's not a hair cell problem. But the problem does exist in the hair cells. Now, if you look at the hair cell, the grouping, the clusters of stereocilia, you actually have what's called mitochondria inside the hair cells. Now, mitochondria, when we were back 50 million years ago, and I'm sorry if you're a religious person, but back 50 million years ago, when we were a single cell organism, we combined with mitochondria to create, an organism that wasn't a single cell organism anymore, and we grew and developed into all the species that you now see today, okay? And the exciting thing is that mitochondria is actually a separate entity to us. It has its own DNA, its own genetics. It's a separate animal. Inside you and me right now, there are millions of parasites and fungus and mold and candida, and we need them. That's right, I said it. We need candida. Candida breaks down cellular waste for us. We have different things that help us with autophagy and mitosis, and we need to work with these animals and these creatures inside of us in order for all our systems to work. Our endocrine system, our different glands in our body, our digestive tract, our mechanisms of anxiety, our fight and flight mechanisms, our thyroid, our pineal gland, our small intestine, large intestine, liver, thyroid, pancreas, spleen. We need all those things. Will fall apart if we don't have outsiders living in our home, people who, like invaders almost, but they're there to help, okay? They work with us. I want you to imagine a shark swimming along, and they have those small little fish, those bottom feeders, that pick off all the dead food in their teeth and underneath, and the shark won't hurt those little fish because it knows that they run a benefit. It's symbiotic, okay? Now, that's almost a word you could use for us, symbiotic, except it's so intertwined with us that in biology and physiology, doctors and ENTs and audiologists and neurologists and everybody stop using that word when it comes to humans because it's just so intertwined. We think that there's nothing else inside of us, but it's wrong. We have many parasites, many fungus, candida overgrowth, okay, the concept of the word overgrowth attached to that means that it's overgrown. It's supposed to be there, but we don't need too much of it, okay? So let's get back to mitochondria. That is really the powerhouse, as everyone says, the powerhouse of the cell. But what does it mean, okay? The powerhouse of the cell means that it allows for all the other cellular, all the different lysines and the endoplasmic reticulum inside of a cell to function. We have thousands of mitochondria per cell, and in those mitochondria we have different processes such as the electron chain transfer process, the creation of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is chemical energy. Now, the mitochondria is electric. And here's the very interesting thing, and if you can understand one thing from this video as we get into this course, these are the main factors that we're going to be addressing and really digging into and fixing in you to fix your tinnitus regardless of how you got it. And these are things such as light, water, and magnetism, okay, and electricity as well. These are the things that your mitochondria can be affected by. These are the things your mitochondria can change in your body. Let me give you an example. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, through the process of phosphorylation inside your mitochondria with the electron chain transfer. You don't have to understand what I just said, but let me just simplify it for you. You have a little creature inside of your cells, inside of your cochlea. That little creature creates what's called ATP, which is chemical energy. I weigh about 83 kilos. My mitochondria are probably going to make 50 kilograms of ATP per day in my entire body. It's fascinating, I know. That energy is chemical energy as well as It's called electrochemical energy, and it will improve or inhibit the ability for my ear to process noise, as well as my ability to taste, as well as my ability to see, as well as my ability to move and function, okay? If we don't have any food, we'll eventually starve to death because we cannot create ATP and we cannot function. ATP, the mitochondria, is most prevalent in our brain and in our heart. Where are all the diseases of today coming from? We have things like Alzheimer's and we have things like heart disease, and most people will die from heart disease. The interesting thing is that these conditions weren't as prevalent back in the 1800s. It was almost unheard of for somebody to die of heart disease in the 1800s. In spite of the fact that people would live almost as long back then as they do now. Sure, you might see some average of life being lower, but if you get rid of sudden infant death syndrome and people dying under the age of 1 because of just a lack of antibiotics and things that we have today that are dangerous but useful, you can see that people did absolutely live as old as we did today, but they died of different things, not heart disease and Alzheimer's, okay? Grain brain, that sort of thing. So we're going to talk about diet, but the fact is that we live in a world today where our mitochondria, which is responsible for our ears' functionality, noise sensitivity, tinnitus, hyperacusis, pulsatile tinnitus, vertigo, Meniere's disease, hearing loss, all come under the instruction of mitochondria. They create the energy that works with their endoplasmic reticulum to create ATP, adenosine triphosphate, phosphorylation, create the chemical energy that allows our ears to process noise, send it back through the auditory nerve into our brain, and right now you can hear what I'm saying, and you can probably hear tinnitus too, but don't worry, that's going to be gone, okay, by using this course. Not a promise, it's not a magic pill, you've got to put in the work, but understand that mitochondrial dysfunction, in my view, in my personal opinion, is the underpinning and the cause of tinnitus. Let's look at the causes of tinnitus. Let's just rattle off a few. We've got medications, we've got stress, we've got noise trauma, we've got physical injury, we got things like chemotherapy, we even have things like sunburn, we have electrocution, I've had people being electrocuted, we have jaw issues, okay, and dietary problems, obesity, that could be, obviously that's linked to a whole bunch of different things. We have things like diabetes, hyperinsulinemia, pre-diabetes, okay, so many different things that can cause tinnitus. That whole list that I gave you, all those things cause mitochondrial dysfunction. It's not that they're causing damage in your hair cells, it's that they're draining the ATP. They are putting the hair cells, the mitochondria inside of the hair cells, the clusters, the stereocilia, under such immense pressure that they then fail to work. People say, oh, well, you've got hearing loss, and so therefore, you have hearing loss in a certain range, like here, high level or low level hearing loss, depending on where you are in the cochlea, and so therefore the brain hates noise and it fills it in with noise. Rubbish, not true, okay? From what I've seen, total rubbish. Why is it then that people have perfect hearing and they have tinnitus? Why is it then that people are deaf and they don't have tinnitus? Doesn't make sense if you think about it for more than 2 seconds, in my opinion. And it's not just because I disrespect ENTs, but I do immensely, but I'm just saying that it makes no sense whatsoever. So, what's actually happening is there's an underlying cause that's causing hearing loss and tinnitus, or hyperacusis, pulsatile tinnitus, vertigo, Meniere's disease, simultaneously. Let me say that again. There's an underlying cause, a problem within the mitochondria inside the hair cells that is causing hearing loss and subjective/objective tinnitus, case of tinnitus, at the same time simultaneously. And you can get one or the other depending on your situation. And I'm personally not sure what it is that would cause one rather than the other. I just know that if you have damage to mitochondria, they will cause those problems, okay? So we're going to be fixing your mitochondria. So where does the sound come from? Why do you hear things? Why don't you just go deaf? Why don't you just lose your hearing? Why is there sound? Well, in my personal opinion, when electricity fails to run, when you have open electricity, when it's running at a default, it creates sound, okay? And it is that electronic dysfunction within the mitochondria, within your cells, within the stereocilia, working with the lymph, endolymph, and the salt inside the mitochondria, inside the lymph. Let me pedal it back. I can talk about this for hours, but it is the dysfunction of the mitochondria causing electronic feedback, okay, which is causing the sound to occur, as well as the hyperacusis, as well as a heartbeat in your ear, as well as a whole bunch of different things. And when you have problems with mitochondria, you normally have problems with blood flow as well, and that can cause heartbeat in your ear, pulsatile tinnitus as well. Let me say this. From what I've seen, in terms of what's the easiest to get rid of, the easiest to get rid of is pulsatile tinnitus. Okay, that's the easiest to get rid of. And then hyperacusis. And then tinnitus. Now this is it. I'm getting this information not from a study that I did or funded, but I'm getting it from working with people one-on-one and reversing these symptoms again and again and again and again and again and again and again, without habituation, without surgery, without any sort of relaxation techniques. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, relaxation techniques are fine. They do directly affect the mitochondria, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. I mean, you're missing out on so much. Explain to me how relaxation techniques are supposed to reverse the damage done by SSRIs or corticosteroids or lipoflavonoids or prescription medications, physical injury, or anything else drug or chemical related. You can't. It's ridiculous. And that's why people who try the relaxation techniques then come to me, and then it's up to me to fix them and tell them it's not the only way. We have to do these steps as well. And these steps are the ones you're going to learn. Okay? So I think I'm going to leave that video there, but welcome to the course. Go and join the Facebook group. You can start talking to me today. And I just want you to know that this can take some time. This can take, some people get silenced in a month. Some people it takes 8 months plus. Okay? But you've done so much damage to yourself unknowingly. It's not your fault. It's not your fault, okay? Unknowingly done damage to yourself through magnetism, light, water, and electricity. And yes, that exists in food, that exists in drugs, that exists in movement. So it's all tied into that. Okay, you've done so much damage to your body, but it's going to take a little bit of time to reverse. And now I say this all throughout the course, and I'll end the video with this. The only thing, literally the only thing that you can do wrong in this course is rush. Take your time. There's no rush. Liam's always going to be here, okay? As long as there are ENTs telling people that tinnitus is for life, you can guarantee that I'll be here, okay? Welcome to the course.